made him stand out in a crowd. Sadly, those gifts framed an attitude proving he believed himself to be God's gift to the world. It was his attitude that canceled out his myriad positive traits, as well as shaking all desire from her head and heart. And his smug brashness was the reason she found the strength to coldly declare, "You've accomplished nothing more than proving you're not a gentleman." "Never claimed to be one," he shot back. At least he was honest. She handed him that much. He didn't want to be the school's best citizen. He never claimed to walk the straight and narrow. He only wanted what was in front of him at the moment. Tearing her eyes from his lustful gaze, Wendy tried to understand her own convoluted feelings. Why was his pull so strong? Why, when every boy in school dreamed of going out with her, did she say yes to Frank? Why did she have to be the good girl when she wanted something no good girl should want? Pushing herself off the tree, Wendy took 2 steps forward and glanced around at the place the kids called Lover's Park. She had to admit, in a cheap sort of way, it was romantic. The moonlight, the breeze rustling through the trees, and the gurgling of the slow-moving creek did create a natural setting for intimacy. Though there were some clouds, it was still clear enough that the stars did offer something to wish on, as the solitude brought about a false sense of independence and maturity. Even nature seemed to be whispering, "Give in to your desires." While she was tempted, she couldn't listen, at least not tonight, and surely not with Frank. But each second she was mute. As each moment went by with no words spoken, it likely convinced him that this trip had not been for naught. Even now, he probably thought she was reconsidering. So, she had to say something no matter what it was to prove she was in control. "I don't know about wasted," she began, trying to be forceful and bold. "I mean, I've always wondered what this place looked like. I've heard whispers at school, you know, from those kind of girls, but all of my friends are a bit too proper to visit this spot." "They're not that proper," Frank grinned. "They just don't admit they've been here." She ignored both his insinuation and the fact that he'd once more closed the distance between them. As she felt his breath on her neck, she knew she had to restart the conversation or face fighting him off again. "Isn't this where you had the hot dog cookout I heard about a month ago?" "How did you hear about it?" He pulled back, seemingly genuinely surprised. "And besides, it was more than 2 months back." Wendy grinned. She'd gotten him to back off. "Well," she sang out, "Becky admitted to me she was here, and it wasn't really a cookout but rather a make-out session." "Yeah," he admitted, "and Becky was a willing participant." "That's not the way she told it," Wendy shot back, fearing she had once more lost control. Frank laughed. "We didn't roast hot dogs, but we were doing some cooking and we did have a fire. Want to see where it was?" "I'm not sure I need to get any farther from the car," she replied apprehensively. Moving closer, he reached out to touch her left hand, and in a suddenly assuring tone, "You can trust me. I won't make you do anything you don't want to do." She hesitated, took a deep breath, and shook her head just hard enough for her blonde ponytail to bounce. "Nobody makes me do anything I don't want to do." "I kinda got that," he replied. Wendy took his hand and allowed him to lead her down by the creek and deeper into the shade of a half-dozen 60-foot trees. When, after only a dozen steps, he put his arm around her shoulder and draped his hand dangerously close to her chest, she wondered if this had been such a good idea. "That's where the fire was," he said, using his right hand to point to a spot down by the water. The moonlight was just bright enough to see where the rocks had circled the space. As her eyes grew accustomed to the shadows, she noted there were still a few charred logs piled in the center. "It must have been a pretty big blaze," she observed. "Big enough," he explained, "but not so big anyone came up here wondering what was going on. And your friend looked beautiful in the flickering light. I do remember that." Trying to ignore what he was implying, Wendy observed empty bottles thrown down by the creek.